Welcome everybody to Startup Grind. If you haven't been to Startup Grind before, it is a global organization dedicated to connecting, educating, and inspiring entrepreneurs. Here in Columbus, every month we feature an incredible entrepreneur and dive into their story and ins and outs of running a startup. And tonight we have a really awesome guest, Sasha Gainullin, who is the CEO of Battleface, which is an insurtech startup in the travel insurance space. I think they've raised over like $14 million and recently closed around with Drive Capital. So we're really excited to dive in, Sasha, and talk a bit about some of your experiences. Before I dive in, though, I do want to make sure that we thank tonight's sponsor for the event, which is Dickinson Wright. If you are a startup and you need help in the legal department, they are a great law firm in town, and Alex Brown is the person to hit up for that. So thank you, Alex. But yeah, no problem, man. And yeah, Sasha, man, welcome to the event.
Yeah, thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah, so Battleface is a pretty new startup, at least to the Columbus community. So I think it would be helpful just at the outset to just tell people a little bit about what Battleface does.
Yeah, sure. Well, in simple terms, we sell travel insurance. We're a travel insurance startup. We all come from the travel insurance background, and we've seen different inconsistencies within the travel insurance market that we wanted to influence and change. So here we are building a global travel insurance company headquartered right here in Columbus.
So when we say travel insurance, I think when I was talking to you before, travel insurance it's definitely a growing market in the United States. I can't remember the exact statistics around it, but give us some idea of like what kinds of things that are covered when we're talking about travel insurance.
Interesting. So yeah, the travel insurance encompasses every possible scenario that you can think of every time essentially you leave your house. Our policies do kick in 100 miles away from home every time you go on a trip, either here in the United States or internationally. Most commonly, we tend to concentrate on protecting your financial investment against the trip, your trip cost, let's say tickets, cost of the hotel, or anything that you're prepaying. And we also go to the extent of protecting you as a traveler, any accidents, illnesses, injuries, getting you back home. Let's say if you did have an injury while traveling, and then of course all the additional benefits when you lose your luggage or you lose your personal property. And we even insure surfing boards if you're a surfer going on a surfing trip to Sri Lanka. So it's all encompassing to you as a traveler, and that's one of the things that we're trying to change within the industry, is to create a product that is customizable to your experience and to your needs.
Now you worked for quite a while in the travel insurance space. I think it's like 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Before deciding to undertake this Battleface initiative. So like, what did you notice that needed to be changed about travel insurance, or what sort of like unique opportunity did you see?
Sure. So, well, I guess the exact same products that I was trained on 20 plus years ago now. I keep saying 20 years ago, but now the number keeps going up. Those are the exact same products that are being sold by the travel insurance industry. Nothing has changed since the late 90s. But we all know that the way we travel, the travel industry as a whole has changed just with the rise of Airbnb, for example. We no longer tend to travel to standard destinations. We go to very unique destinations. We experience different things. I think millennials and younger demographic has changed the landscape, and which requires for the travel insurance industry to start offering products that actually are relevant to today's environment. My specific experience in travel insurance is emergency medical assistance and helping you while you're in different parts of the world and you were involved in an accident and you need to be transferred to another medical facility or back home. And through this work, this is where you can really test the boundaries of travel insurance and what is good, what's not. And in the last, I would say 7 to 10 years, we started to see where products don't really work for the travelers. Often travelers are going to destinations that are not covered by their standard travel insurance, and they don't know that. Or situations like COVID-19 automatically kicks travel insurance out of the way because there's different levels of exclusions that are within the policy. And as you start diving into the actual problem, you start to realize that there's more exclusions than inclusions in travel insurance policies. And 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 the disconnect between the customer and the travel insurance companies is huge. In general, people don't trust insurance companies, and especially once it comes to travel insurance.
Yeah, and so I think that's something that, a lot of industries have as an issue is sort of customer trust. Insurance definitely has had that issue over the years. And when I was doing research on Battleface, there was a word or phrase that kept coming up, which is sort of human centered insurance. And I was kind of hoping you could talk a little bit about that, and
Mhm.
how does that kind of impact this customer trust kind of issue?
So, customers or people in general are the center point of our company, and in order for you to excel at Battleface or at our company, you have to have a genuine passion for people and helping others. And this is the core principle of our foundation. We are building something that is unique and that is relevant to today's travelers' needs and today's customers. When we're actually playing around with the word customer, we wanted to emphasize that it's people in general that we're working with, and as part of our mission statement, we actually use word humanity centered global travel insurance company, because even once it comes to social impactful causes, we want to make sure that there is an impact within the countries that we're traveling to or people around us. So every decision that we make goes back to the people that we're working with, either our customers or our partners or our employees, or even some of the causes that we're passionate about. And that's the approach that we're taking to building a global company and a diverse company and a multicultural company. And that's quite important to us to understand each other, to be able to deliver on those understandings, and to build a global company. You really need to be open as a person, and you need to be very, very accepting of the differences between us, either if it comes to culture or race or gender or sexuality or anything that is encompasses as a word of diversity.
I mean, I imagine this plays some part of it, but what would you say is sort of like the biggest differentiator between Battleface and other travel insurance companies?
Um, Good question. One of the biggest differences is that we're constantly questioning each other and our industry and our products even. So there's this ever evolving need to make sure that our products and services are responding well to today's travelers.
Mm.
What we do in a pure sense of how we different right now, we tend to do, that focus on customer. We want to know the customer and the customer's journey from start to finish. So we're keen on working with customers at the time when they're purchasing the policy or making that decision, or at the time when they have a claim and they really need help from us, or at the time when they're traveling and are involved in emergency medical assistance or travel assistance, or when they return back home. So that's probably one of our biggest differences. And once it comes, and from there, we built out our products. And our products are very unique in the way we take the modular approach to our benefits, where you as a consumer can essentially tailor your own policy, and you can design it in a way that is important to you. And we take the same approach with our partners as well. So our biggest difference within the industry is that we don't resell the exact same product, for example, that you find on battleface.com, and then all of a sudden, let's say we go to an airline.com partnership, we know that the way their customers are traveling or what type of customers they have requires a bit more unique approach of defining that product specifically for that platform. So, and we're striving on that. And of course, we're using technology to simplify the process as well, because the biggest issue within the industry is it's built on legacy systems that have been created, decades ago, which does not allow for that customization to take place real time. And that's what we're trying to influence with Battleface.
So I think when we talked before, I was saying that, I don't know if I've ever been pitched sort of, travel insurance, except for maybe like when I'm on an airline website and I'm clicking, do I want to make sure that I can get a refund on my ticket if the trip gets canceled for any reason? So I guess like if you were kind of putting on the hat of like talking about why is travel insurance necessary now, what would you say?
Well, that's the thing. It's just there's so many different components to your decision making about travel insurance, and it also depends where you're from as well. For example, when we're taking a look at our colleagues or our customers out of the UK, that's a very what we call mature market. British nationals, they don't leave the country unless they purchase travel insurance or they have travel insurance, and it's part of their buying process, and they're very aware of the type of products that they're buying and exactly the benefits that they would need while they're traveling. Where here in the US, it is not as mature, and it's changing, of course, with there's different components to the change. It has to do with the way we research into things nowadays. For example, the healthcare debate has helped a lot because all of a sudden everyone's are educated about the type of policies they have back at home, where, for example, my grandparents or my parents would think that their home health insurance will cover them while they're traveling internationally, and that's not the case. Whenever there is some type of disaster, that's quite important as well. And in case of today environment with the pandemic and COVID-19, which exposed a lot of things, both the positive and the negative about the value of travel insurance. The positive is that it certainly is necessary. And even now, if you're booking a trip, let's say to Costa Rica, you're required to have travel insurance. And some countries going to the extent of telling their visitors exactly the type of insurance that you need and the type of benefits you need to have to meet the entry requirements. And that requirement extends not only to travelers that require a visa, but anybody. Even if you don't need a visa, you're asked to have travel insurance. On the negative side of things, what the pandemic, for example, did, or COVID-19, I still remember the headline article from New York Times back in June, I think June 17th or 16th, where the headline was, "Is travel insurance worthless?" ? And my answer would be yes. The way it is right now, it does not respond well to the needs of the travelers. And once you take a look at what happened with the COVID-19 and last year, people could not get their money back. A lot of claims were denied. On the European side of things, travel insurance companies even went to the extent of advising their customers to return back home, and if they don't, they will not be protected while they're traveling. So there was a lot of negative connotation to travel insurance and how travel insurance responded to the pandemic. But altogether, even in today's environment, I would say it is quite an important element of our travel journey. And again, it doesn't matter if you're going to ski in Colorado or you're going to explore the Himalayas. Even here domestically, when you're traveling outside of your PPO network or your stays, travel insurance is quite important once it comes to covering those medical expenses or deductibles, or even helping you to rebook your flight and get you back home. And even nowadays, we're seeing our customers who are traveling, they need to have so much flexibility because travel itinerary changes last minute because of the current situation.
So this is a kind of random question, but you always have the most interesting examples when you say, for example, you're, surfing in Sri Lanka, or I think before you were saying like vacation in Mallorca. Do you get to travel a lot as part of this? or
I
or do you
used
just have to
to.
know? Okay.
No, I used to definitely travel a lot. Now we have two young kids, so
Mm.
my travel is actually Columbus Zoo
Mm.
recently, which was quite
Okay.
nice.
Yeah.
So I used to, yeah, but of course, from the nature of work, again, my expertise in travel insurance is emergency medical assistance. So I've dealt with some unique cases in many places around the world, and so they're kind of in my day-to-day, I guess, conversation. So yeah.
Well, so you touched on some stuff in your previous answer that I want to make sure I follow up on, because I think this is interesting for like the end consumer. And I think one of the things you said is that it's not necessarily guaranteed that your like personal health insurance will cover you if you're in a different country, right?
Mhm.
Or I guess if you're doing some extreme sport or something. So I guess like, do you have any tips around, for people who are trying to travel, like how do they book travel insurance or find travel insurance?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, definitely lots of research. And this is kind of probably going back to one of your other questions. You've never seen anyone pitch travel insurance, right?
Mm.
When you're
Yeah,
unless
not
it's
really.
on the airline.com type of space. And this is where I think statistically it's quite interesting. There's different studies around the airline.com space. That's actually only 8 to 10% purchase travel insurance on those websites. Simply because, again, the trust factor is not there. And the product that is being offered through the airlines is not really, does not speak to you. Because, for example, if you book your flight from Columbus to Chicago or Columbus to Nairobi, Kenya, it's the exact same product. But you know that by the nature of the booking, you're not going to be doing the exact same things. So why is it that the exact same product that's being sold to you through these websites? So you as a consumer already are not comfortable with the product that's being offered to you. So, and this is what we're changing as well. We're changing the way the distribution works. Most likely, if you're traveling to Nairobi, Kenya, you're going to be associated with some type of specialty group or a tour operator or a club or a network. And this is how we would find you. You would have a very specific request and need that you would be searching into, or you would be somehow you're putting this trip together for yourself or your friends. And in fact, this is how we started Battleface at first, when our very first customers were journalists or adventure travelers, surfers, divers, explorers, and they all belonged to some type of association or a club. And then and it was quite interesting just to see that each customer type was not happy with the product that was just offered on the, let's say, travelinsurance.com space. Actually, there is a website, travelinsurance.com, and they're great. So, but it's, I'm just using it as a general term. And then you go and you start customizing a product specifically for these marketplaces. And that's how we would get in touch with you as a traveler. Then, of course, now we're trading in a general travel space. And there's different components to being able to get to the customer that that speaks well to your needs, essentially.
So I'm just curious on sort of the running a company like this. You seem to have a product that has an infinite amount of use cases, and being in the business of creating products myself, it just seems like that would be an extremely complex kind of endeavor. So how do you figure that part of it out?
um, well, you don't. You just continue to figure it out. I think. I think that's and it changes. That goes back to our one of our principles, just making it relevant, right? Day to day. Everything we do has to make sense for today and for tomorrow. Whatever we thought was the right approach yesterday might no longer work today, and that's the key principle of the company. And I think initially we're solving one problem, which is trying to create a tech platform that would essentially take into consideration different nuances once it comes to international travel. Destination is one component, very important, where you have to take into consideration your destination information, that you apply one rate towards to that destination. And that changes, of course, right? It depends on the territory, depends on the cost of medical care, or depends on pandemic exposure or conflicts or terrorist attacks. And you figure that problem out, then your age, and then your activities, and the number of days of travel. So once we've created that platform, we were comfortable with creating products. And then we continue to evolve with those products and benefits as we started to hear more from our customers. And that's another key strategic point, is to listen to your customers and get their feedback and start making improvements, going in line with their needs. Actually, our very first product that we've created, I don't think we would ever launch it again, because that's certainly didn't work. And it did not respond well to the needs of the customers. And you just keep testing and testing and testing. And then of course you get amazing new team members like Derek joining the team, that always questioning and investigating and coordinating between all the departments within the company. And so that's very important as well, is to listen to to everyone you work with, especially, well, I guess actually everybody, because at every point of the company, we touch the customer one way or another, and you just keep going.
So that's super insightful and a good, definitely a good thought. So, but you touched on this aspect of technology, and I am curious about what is sort of the technology piece of the company.
Well, there's many. Again, this is kind of the fun part, because travel insurance was an innovative line for insurance in general decades ago, because that was and actually I got to work with a guy in Wisconsin. His name was John Noel, who was essentially the first person to create the concept of travel insurance in the United States, and it was a company called Travel Guard. And technology piece of it here, what we're doing at Battleface, flips that entire model around of traditional when kind of one size fits all type of product approach. And we're using technology for, first of all, that foundation that we've initially built, which takes into consideration all of the components that would have an impact on the rate of the policy. Then create a custom, it's not just a customizable approach to the actual product, but also to the technology piece as well, because you as a consumer, obviously, as you go through our website, for example, we're asking you questions and you don't know this, but you're customizing your own policy. And then eventually we deliver a product to you that works for you. And then there's a lot more to do once it comes to automating our claims process, for example. Many companies in the industry are still sending PDF, well, not even PDF, original claim forms by mail for you to file a claim. So that's one of the challenges that we're going to be improving on, is that should not be even we should not even have to deal with any of the forms when you're filing for a claim when you're traveling. Another is assistance in our services, for example. Technology helps you to find the doctor that's closest to you, the type of doctor that you need internationally, or speak to the doctor through your mobile app, settle your bill, or actually tell you what's safe, what's not safe when you're traveling or where you're traveling to. For example, most recently, Derek and our team had launched destination information with one of our partners, Sherpa, where you type in your destination information and we tell you upfront what is needed before you travel, so you are better prepared as a traveler going into the places. So that's what technology exists today and the vision that we have for the future for the company. And going back to that example of you booking a flight from Columbus to Houston versus to Nairobi, Kenya, that all has to do with API and delivery of the benefits and delivery of the products and the policy to you through our partner websites.
So it sounds like you've got two things you've got to be good at least, which is you've got to be really good at technology and you've got to be really good at insurance at the same time.
Yes, that's for sure. The insurance part is key and technology is key. And we were lucky enough to have both. And especially travel insurance as well, because it's so specialized, right? So we're used to home insurance, car insurance, life insurance, health insurance. So it's somewhat an easier concept. Once it comes to travel insurance, that's where it gets specialized. Even here in the United States, for example, in some states, it's very regulated, the travel insurance industry. And some states consider it as one line of insurance, and other states consider it as a different line of insurance. Some consider it as both. And because we touch on so many different benefits, we have health insurance benefits, we have property benefits, we have accidental death and dismemberment benefits. So it touches almost every part of insurance in general in one policy that is only active during your trip.
So I'm curious sort of about you running startup and kind of some of the lessons that you've kind of learned along the way. I know last time we were talking, we talked about sort of like the experience of raising money and stuff like that. So I'm just wondering, do you have any thoughts or advice on sort of that process?
Yeah, certainly if I kissed a lot of frogs before we got somewhere. Because before COVID-19, the travel insurance conversation was very, very simple, right? It's like my mom, right? She still thinks I'm a travel agent. So it's very difficult for people to grasp the concept of travel insurance. And the most common denominator is I see products on delta.com or airline.com type of space. So then there's no other way for you to get to the customer. And second challenge was It's true. People think of travel insurance when they travel, right? So, and again, it depends on the marketplace. In America, we tend to travel maybe once a year, maybe less, maybe more. In Europe, for example, it's more frequent than that, 4 times per year as average. So, how do you actually create a sustainable market and opportunity to get into the space? And on top of it, it was flooded. With large companies, big insurance companies that are offering travel insurance, and how do you compete with that? So certainly it took a lot of conversation to be able to find, first of all, support for seed round. And we were lucky enough to be supported by a company called Greenlight Reinsurance out of Cayman Islands, and they come from the insurance background. And they were looking into, and there still are, investing in companies that are within technology space that are making a difference within their area of expertise. Plus, where can they add value as a reinsurance company? Essentially, reinsurance is insurance for insurance, and that was a game changer for us when we met Greenlight. And of course, from that experience, what I've learned is that I had to really concentrate on what I'm not good at and what we need to concentrate, what we need help with. Because when I started working with Greenlight, and actually follow Investor FinTech Ventures Fund, they come from FinTech space, but also deep financial background. And I really loved how much of help I had from both in both areas, finance or insurance and reinsurance, and that worked really, really well, especially right before the pandemic hit, and then pandemic hits, and then we had these two incredible partners to help us to get through it, and that's what I think really, really helped us with Drive Capital as well. When I remember, I was actually here in I think it was in October, in this auditorium. If anyone's been in Drive Capital's office, you know that little auditorium space that they have, and I was pitching to about 30 to 40 employees at the time, or a group of people here, and after the conversation, a lot of very, very intelligent questions were thrown at me, and some of them I was able to answer them because it had to do with the market size or travel insurance in general. Anything travel insurance related was an easy answer. And then we started diving into like product team, for example. We've never had a product team. And to me, product is an underwriting product from the insurance perspective. You put a product together. And so when somebody asked me, do you have a product team? I'm like, yeah, of course we have underwriters. And they're like, no, we need product teams. So that was an eye-opening experience for me. And then we started having a dialogue where what we are also struggling in, or what we don't have, or what our weaknesses are. And this was an easy conversation because immediately Drive saw an opportunity where they could add value. And that was again an experience that I've had, of course, during seed round, but more so this time. Now we're a fast-growing company with a very sophisticated engineering team between both Europe and US here in Columbus, a growing product organization and a product team. I remember somebody was asking if we had somebody who was doing P&A analysis in the finance department. We didn't have a single finance person on the team. Now we have an amazing team member, Lois, and she actually comes from Columbus, and she used to work for L Brands, and she added so much, like so much value to the company and to the way we're doing things and questioning things from the financial perspective. I've never thought that we could be in the position that we're in, and that was just a few months into it. So yeah, and I think my biggest advice would be to really concentrate on not your weaknesses. It's kind of like, it's a weird word, but maybe on some of the opportunities that you could drive from the investors that are joining your team.
I think that's a really, really insightful and really good point. And I think founders somewhat tend to have a bias towards action and, trying to get things done, and also you kind of feel a special sense of ownership over what you're working on, at least sometimes. And it might be hard to see where those gaps are or see where those weaknesses, that shouldn't be a dirty term, but sometimes people feel that way. But like, I guess, like, how do you kind of start to think about,
Mhm.
here are gaps or here are weaknesses? Do you have any kind of like practice you put in place, or does it just kind of come out of sort of operating? I mean, I imagine you have to
Mm.
have to learn some kind of self-awareness or something.
Well, I guess it's a continuous, yeah, for sure. It probably is a continuous process. I mean, um, maybe because, of course, in the medical assistance world, when someone calls you at 2 o'clock in the morning and they were in the car crash in South Africa, and immediately that you alone cannot be the only person
Hmm.
helping that particular situation, right? So it's a 24/7 infrastructure. In the early days, in early 2000s, when TravelGuard asked me to replicate the medical assistance here in the US, it was just me, but I quickly realized that I couldn't do it by myself. Just physically, it was impossible. So
Hmm.
I had to build a team around me who were better in different things. And so, for example, my first hire was Marnie, and she was an amazing travel agent. So I didn't know anything about booking systems or travel booking systems. And while she was doing medical assistance work with me, she was also doing travel bookings, like booking flights and getting people in and out of different places. And you just start building, building, building. And that's, I think, is a similar approach here as well. It's just you keep adding different talents and building a team around you um, uh, with the skills and backgrounds that doesn't come from the exact experience as mine, because that's where I think the magic happens. Different ideas, different ways of doing things, and if we go back to again to the initial principle of questioning and making it relevant, that's the only way of doing it. So I think that came from my training in the medical assistance world. But altogether, I believe that this is how the company is as well, because in order for you to be a customer centric company or humanity centric company, you have to be extremely flexible in the way you think, the way you react to things, the way you take feedback and analyze feedback. Certainly, it's not like we take every single advice word for word, but we use it and we build our own story, essentially. And I think it's more. And now it has. And if you would like to work with Battleface or within this environment, you have to be very, very flexible in your way of thinking, because everything we do is not the same just from the pure thinking of how we're building a global company. Like right now, our biggest challenge is how do we actually dive in even further and deeper into local countries? So, for example, what products matter to an Argentinian traveler going to Brazil or a German traveler going to the United States? And that's our picture perfect in the future, is that we have a truly global company, but with localized products, and that's going to be a key development point for us.
So you touched on sort of what we were kind of just talking about, like building out a team around you, and I'm curious about what does sort of the team look like today, and like how do you kind of see the team growing over, like, let's say, like the next 6 months or something?
So now we're nearly a company of 60 people, and in between different time zones, and yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you so 60 people, how long, where were you at like 3 or 4 months ago? Was that a pretty quick ramp up to
Mhm.
60?
Yeah, I think we're we're about 20, 25 people. I should actually write this down and just the history of Battleface and month by month.
Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely ramped up quite fast, and we grew rapidly. We started to grow rapidly in July of last year because we are in a position where we're the only company that was able to offer products to travelers over on the European side that had all the benefits that they needed at the time, coverage for COVID-19, travel warnings, and everything else. So it was an overnight kind of success where all of a sudden we didn't have enough people to answer phone calls. As much tech as you pile up on travelers, phone calls is still good. Old traditional phone call is always a good way to get for customers to get in touch with you. And that requires obviously people being available. So this is where the beauty of different time zones come in. And if we build out our infrastructure between different time zones, we can have that luxury of having people available at any given time. So yeah, I think now we are ramping up quite rapidly in our engineering area, in our product area, in our growth area, in our marketing area. And then we're looking into some of the international destinations and locations, like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, for expanding our services and products in those territories. I think in the next 6 months, we'll probably double the amount of people, and majority of the people would be based in Columbus, but also expanding in different territories as well throughout Europe and other countries.
Planning for growth and scaling is a complicated thing that I think if you're lucky as a startup, you kind of have that problem. But I guess, like, how do you think about sort of, how aggressively you add team members? Like, I mean, obviously in the best case scenario, it's in response to like extreme demand and revenue, but like, how do you think about that?
Well, that's the beauty of, I guess, a startup, right? You're thinking of growth and ramping up and what the story that makes sense, and you start building towards that. Where just a year ago, we were concentrating um, on responding based on the budget or EBITDA or profits. But now there's so much opportunity that's in front of us to continue to grow and develop and scale.
Mm.
I think it really is just looking at the future versus to what's happening today. And what do we need? And this is where the beauty of the product team and Derek and his team, that was phenomenal change within the company, is how do we actually start concentrating on the problems and what do we need to do to solve those problems? And of course, we're doing it at the next 12 months level, and we're doing it at the micro level of what's important for the next 3 months. And then that's how we built out our plans and infrastructure and objectives and execution strategies based on those problems that we're solving.
Gotcha. So I do want to open it up. I feel like there may be some questions, and if they're not, I'll assume we're doing an amazing interview. I also have a bunch more questions lined up if people don't have any at the moment. But are there any questions at this juncture? I see Warner Moore. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, sir?
Yeah, sure. And it's super tactical. And thanks for sharing your story with us. I'm just curious because I went through this exercise recently myself. Do you offer coverage for peer-to-peer rental with your car rental coverage?
Oh, I think right now our filings is only for the rental car companies. When
So
you
not Toro, for example.
Yeah, but I'll have to. That's actually an interesting point because that's coming up right now in different. Of course, the way we rent and cars and travel. But right now, I think our filings are only for car rental places and registered car rentals where you are renting the car. But I'll double check with our underwriting team and see if we have any other plans to expand that on that coverage. Yeah, but yeah, it's yeah, we're not there yet. I don't think with the Turo of the world to offer those products yet for those platforms.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? I have one in the meantime if people are still thinking. So you mentioned that you traveled a lot in the early days. I'm wondering, like, this is not a pre-planned question, but like, do you have any crazy experiences from that time? It
Oh
sounds
gosh.
pretty intense, honestly.
Yeah, and it's, like of course that's one of the questions that it depends on the audience, right? On some of the stories, but uh yeah, there's I think my most profound experience of travel was to Kenya, because I spent a lot of time building an orphanage in Kenya
Oh,
outside of
wow.
Nairobi, um and and that was actually part of my travel guard experience. Travel guard donated me for a couple of years to this cause in Kenya to build a village that bridged. So AIDS pandemic wiped out the middle generation to bridge grandparents and kids together into a self-sustaining village. So my objective was to lobby the government to get 1,000 acres of land to essentially for us to build the village. So I spent a lot of time in Kenya. But anyway, this is not the crazy experience, but I spent a lot of time in the slums of Nairobi. Of what I wanted to do is actually experience um, uh, the life of what we were working on. So I've received a lot of kind of like advice not to go, and it's like very dangerous, and it's very yeah, like not a lot of people go to these areas, and maybe it was my age at the time, so early 20s. So I was pretty oblivious to these, to the potential risks. And that was probably the most profound experience I've had, is being able to interact with people in that area, and spend a lot of time actually talking to people, understanding what the problems are. And so that was probably the most unique, and something that obviously would not happen to me probably for a long, long time. That would always be there. So that's, I would say, would be on the top list, kind of the experiences that I had. But other than that, of course, there's plenty of others.
Yeah, that is, I've never been in any kind of, place like that, but I could imagine that would be extremely profound as an
Yeah.
experience. Um, any other questions here? So one question I have is, as you're thinking about this strategically and just sort of getting to market for a product like this, I think you said in the early days it was sort of working with groups and established, like you said, journalists and that sort of thing. So I guess, how do you sort of approach like the go to market strategy for this product?
So that's yeah. Again, it all depends on what we're trying to accomplish with certain products and execution. So, and what the goals are, and studying what the customer's needs are. So, for example, in a case of journalists, when they travel to a certain territory, or when they travel in general, the standard travel insurance product doesn't really work for their needs. They're looking for medical expense cover, medical evacuation, kind of like the personal protection, and then protection for the equipment. And you do a lot of research. You're speaking to the potential customers and the groups. Then you also do a lot of analysis, who else is out there and what they're offering and what type of offering it is. And then I think what's unique to us is our conversations with the customers. I remember one of the very first customers that bought our policy. She was actually a journalist traveling into conflict zones, and we wanted to talk to her and find out exactly why did she buy the policy, what exactly worked, what didn't work, and we started our blog that's attached to our website, and those interviews are actually a part of our history as well, and that's how at the time we were outlining a strategy. Nowadays, of course, it's all data science, analytics, looking at different metrics and doing a lot of analysis, A/B testing, a lot of kind of what works, what doesn't work, and then rolling out the strategy further based on those findings. And adjusting as well. I think adjusting is key here as well.
Super interesting. Any question? I'll pause real quick before I ask another one.
I have a question actually, Lucas.
Hey, Keel. Okay. Yeah, go for it, man.
Hi, Sasha. Keel and Eve here. We actually messaged, I think, a little bit back and forth on LinkedIn. I work at Root Insurance. It's good to see you again. And
nice to see you.
Yeah, and good. Thank you for being here. And hey, Derek, what's up? Good to see you. It's been a while. So obviously, I think insurtech has just gained a lot of like momentum recently, kind of as an industry and kind of as a new market, so to speak. All the way from like companies like Root and Lemonade to even small companies like here in Columbus, like Bingo Pet Insurance. They're trying to improve that process. And my kind of take is a lot of companies seem to be almost trying to take very similar approaches where they're like digitizing and trying to like make it mobile first. And I'm curious to know, as you lead a company with large product teams and things like that, how do you almost differentiate? Are you just kind of following the crowd, or actually are you building a product that's solving a real problem for like end users?
Okay. Certainly for us, we've never been in the business to lead or follow or compare, right? We're always responding to a problem. And we started a company by responding to a problem. Many customers were coming to us because of what we were doing in the insurance industry. Why is it that I can't find proper travel insurance? Or why is it that I can't find, why is it that my claim is denied? And we're solving that problem. And then towards the end, we're continuing, well, not towards the end, I guess, as it continues, we're continuing to solve the problems that we're actually seeing even with our own products or services or the industry. And we're just continuing on and we use technology, data science, analytics, and product design and analysis to solve those problems. I don't think our approach to problem solving has changed, actually the approach has changed. I think our desire to solve problems did not change, but I think the way we're changing those problems has definitely changed with the expansion of our teams and technology and product creation. So that's all a part of it. So I think what the insurtech industry is doing is very similar. They're solving problems within their own industry. What Root, for example, the company you're working with, has done in the car insurance industry, or Hippo or Lemonade. And I think that's all comes from a very similar background of trying to solve a single problem that eventually morphs into solving many other problems within that environment. So yeah.
Good stuff. Good question. Great answer. So one thing I'm curious about is you mentioned a lot of times these countries where I guess you can't normally get insurance if you're traveling, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, what is the sort of like explanation of like why these areas aren't being covered, and like how are you kind of approaching it differently?
So that goes back to the initial problem that we're solving, because the standard travel insurance space or the standard travel insurance market has been built on one product fits all. In the early days, I guess going back to my mom or my grandparents, they went to a travel agency to book their flight, and it's a single destination doing similar things, internationally, to go and see Eiffel Tower in Paris, or close to home, take a cruise. So that's why those products actually worked quite nicely, and they worked for the mass kind of general trips. But over time, that has changed. The way we travel, where we're going has changed. What we're doing has changed. And unfortunately, the travel insurance products did not change because the distribution model remained the same. And the distribution model is very, very expensive as well, because it's based on legacy systems. There's not much of innovation that comes when it comes to tech. So it's very difficult for large insurance companies to actually do something different, customize it, or apply tech, or start creating products that actually respond to specific needs of a customer. Because once you dive into a journalist, or you dive into a surfer or a diver, to them that's very small, and to solve that problem, that will take a lot of time. And for startups like Battleface, we have the luxury of being innovative and applying systems and creating systems that could actually solve the problems of being able to custom build a product for your needs. And that's essentially what we were doing. And simply because those products that are created on the one product fits all, you'll see more exclusions than inclusions, again, going back to that problem. So of course, if you're, for example, what was quite interesting to us is that war and terrorism exclusion is the #1 exclusion on travel insurance policies. So when you are traveling in Germany and all of a sudden there's a terrorist attack, chances are that your policy could be denied, or your claim could be denied. So why is that? So maybe 40 years ago, war and terrorism was a novelty when we traveled to places like Germany. Nowadays, not so much. And so how do you solve that problem? Pandemics is another phenomena. At the time before COVID-19, it was all regional based. Ebola, SARS, swine flu. And how do you solve that problem? In the traditional insurance world, you just put it as an exclusion. Pandemics are excluded. In the startup world, you actually try to solve the problem by creating a tech platform that can essentially properly assess the risk based on your destination at the time of your travel.
So you have better technology, you're more innovative and agile, and it's kind of like more problem than what they think it's worth in like the traditional quote unquote travel insurance industry. So you're able to go after that, and they're not tech, I guess, doing it.
Sure, and yeah, maybe. And I think throughout times, of course, you learn more and more. And for example, in the large insurance world, travel insurance is just a very small part of their overall business. So there is a reason why Root, for example, is solving car insurance or problems, or Hippo is solving home insurance problems. And what unique to all of us is that we're solving problems within our marketplace, and we're perfecting it, and we're doing it over and over and over and over. In the traditional insurance model, again, these lines are just there and they are existing, but there's no concentration on a single problem now on this specific line. To us, it's a big market, and to us, it keeps growing. And globally, it's a massive opportunity. And if you have that concentration, then you would be able to actually continue to innovate and continue to make a change. And that's what we're doing. We're creating a global travel insurance company that specifically is concentrating on travel insurance. And we'll continue to do that for many years to come.
Awesome. Well, one last question, which is, obviously you've moved to Columbus, the really significant portion of the company's here and going to be here. How can the Columbus community support what you're doing?
Columbus, yeah, Columbus is an amazing place. So far, been all positive experience here in Columbus. Everyone is very, very friendly and reminds me a lot of Wisconsin, where I spent a lot of time during my times, early days, and in the US, and of course, working within the travel insurance industry, all came out of Wisconsin. What really, really matters to us, and I think to startups in general, is conversations like this. So that's huge, because that's opens up an awareness about the company, about the culture, about the opportunity. What I really, really am passionate about, actually, what I'm really excited about, is everyone that joined our team, is how passionate everybody is, and everyone has a very, very unique approach to learning about what we're doing and learning about the industry and how much care there is for what we're building. So yeah, I think just being open to the community, I think, is key to us, and being able to tell our story. And of course, what's important is for us to continue to build our presence in the city, or in Columbus, and I guess in Ohio in general. And everyone has been extremely supportive. Even Department of Insurance, we were on the phone with them a couple of weeks ago, and it was incredible just to have an exchange with the entire team at Department of Insurance of Ohio, and how excited they were about what we're doing, and how they were so helpful and accommodating to our business plan, and how the state now can actually support our foundation and our future growth as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for coming. We are over our 1 hour time limit. So yeah, it was great. Oh, no, it's not. No, it's great. That means we did an amazing job. And yeah, thank you so much, Sasha, for coming and sharing some of the story, some of your story, and some info about Battleface, man.
Oh yeah, thanks to be here. Good to be here. So
Awesome.
thank you, guys.
All right. Yeah, thanks. All right.